Dim the lights. Let your eyes grow heavy. Imagine yourself waking not in the comfort of a room, not beneath a roof, but in a world untouched by cities, unclothed by fire, unmeasured by calendars or clocks. You open your eyes 1 million years ago. The air is sharper, colder, raw with a purity we can no longer taste. The horizon is wide, unbroken by buildings or highways. Grasslands stretch like an endless sea, broken only by the dark silhouettes of forests and the slow winding veins of rivers. The earth is alive here in ways both beautiful and brutal. Mammoths roam across plains, woolly rhinoceroses graze, saber-toothed cats prowl in silence, and hyenas laugh under the moon. This is the forgotten dawn, the age of Homo erectus. They are not us, but not far from us either. Their foreheads slope gently back, their jaws are stronger, their bodies are built to endure, to walk for miles upon miles. Their brains, smaller than ours, are still vast, about 2/3 of the size of yours, but burning with possibility. They have already left Africa, spreading across valleys and highlands, into Asia, into Europe, step by step, fireless, cityless, but alive. And tonight, you are among them. You sit crouched in the tall grass, the smell of soil clinging to your skin, the cold pressing against your bones. Your stomach tightens with hunger, because hunger is never far away in this world, and your ears remain alert, always listening. Every rustle in the dark could mean danger. The lion, heavier and larger than the lions you know today, may already be circling. The hyena, its laugh a death song, might already be waiting for your weakness. Yet here, despite the danger, humans endure. Not with walls or weapons of metal, not with the comfort of lights or alarms, but with something far quieter. Together, in silence. Homo erectus did not have the words you use now. They did not tell stories in full sentences, or plan their days with names and numbers. Instead, their language was in the tilt of a head, the sharpness of a glance, the rhythm of a hand striking stone. Their silence was not emptiness, it was a language of its own. But in this moment, the silence is heavy. You look around and you wonder, how do these people survive without fire, without speech, without farms or shops or villages? The answer is written in their bodies. They endure by walking, by moving, by never staying in one place long enough to be devoured by the world around them. Their legs carry them for hours across landscapes that would crush modern comfort. Their backs bend to dig roots from the earth, to strip fruit from low branches, to scavenge meat from carcasses left behind by greater predators. At times they break bones with heavy stones, cracking them open to taste the marrow, fat, rich, life-giving. At other times they share berries, nuts, and bitter plants, their teeth grinding down on fibers that modern teeth might never chew. Survival is not about luxury, it is about rhythm, about patience, about knowing when to move and when to wait. The tools they carry are rough yet miraculous in their own way. Baculan hand axes, teardrop-shaped stones chipped carefully into sharp edges. With these they can cut, scrape, pierce. The rhythm of stone against stone is the heartbeat of their world. It is the sound of survival. But even the strongest hands cannot stop the cold night from coming. When the sun sinks, the landscape transforms. Day belongs to the hunters, but night belongs to fear. The darkness is not silent. It growls, it whispers, it watches. The predators emerge with golden eyes, with teeth sharpened by hunger. Humans without fire, without walls, cannot fight them directly. And so they huddle. They press close to one another, backs against rock, bodies against bodies, letting the warmth of skin replace the warmth of flames. They choose caves when they can find them, rock overhangs when luck provides, or sometimes nothing but the trembling cover of grass. You can almost hear their breath now, slow, cautious, trying not to attract the attention of whatever hunts beyond the shadows. The stars are above them, vast and cold, scattered like shards of broken stone. The moon gives light, but it is not enough. And so the humans wait. They listen. They endure. There is poetry in their endurance. They do not know yet of empires, of monuments, of machines. They do not know yet of calendars or the tyranny of the clock. What they know is raw life, the pulse of blood in their ears, the ache of hunger, the comfort of the group, the rhythm of stone, the silence of the night. It is easy to imagine them as brutish, But that is our arrogance. They were not brutish. They were not. They were careful. They were observant. They were survivors in a world that would not forgive even the smallest mistake. Their silence held intelligence. Their movements held wisdom. Their eyes, like yours, looked at the same moon you look at now. But one question lingers as you crouch beside them in the grass, as you share in their hunger and their fear. In such a world, where the night is long, where predators circle, where the air itself bites at your skin, how do you speak without words? The silence is not enough forever. Something else must emerge. And so, the dawn waits for more than survival. The dawn waits for the first sparks of language. You sit among them now, the night still heavy, the world still dark. There are no words to greet you, no sentences to welcome you into this fragile circle of survival. And yet, you are not lost. You understand them, even without speech. A hand rises, palm open, and you know it means wait. A finger points toward the trees, and you know it means danger. A sudden breath, sharp through the nose, and you know it means silence. This is the language before language, the oldest tongue of all, the body itself. Homo erectus did not carry with them the flowing rivers of grammar that you now take for granted. They did not tell stories with past and future, but still they spoke through their eyes, through their faces, through the tension of their muscles. A child whimpers, and the mother presses her fingers gently to its lips. The group crouches lower. A glance passes from one to another, sharp as flint, and in that glance is a world of meaning. Stay close, stay ready, survive. Perhaps they made sounds too, short and raw, the beginnings of what would one day become your words. A low hum to call, a sharp bark to warn, a rising cry to summon help. The mouth was already a tool of survival, but the sentences you know, the stories, the lullabies, the promises, those were still far away. Even so, silence itself was a strength. The silence carried its own rhythm, a communication older than any alphabet. Imagine the patience of sitting together for hours, with nothing but eyes and gestures to connect you. Imagine the depth of attention it required. Nothing distracted them, no screen glowed in their hands. No noise drowned their thoughts, only the slow conversation of silence. In that silence they hunted together. Watch them move across the plains in loose formation. They do not shout commands. They do not whistle signals. Instead, one tilts his head toward the left and another follows. One crouches and the rest lower their bodies in unison. The prey does not hear them, does not see them. Cooperation without words, a symphony of motion, composed of gestures, practiced over lifetimes. And when danger comes, when the shadows break and the predator charges, it is the same language that saves them. A sudden shout, raw and instinctive, sends the group scattering. A mother throws up her arms, drawing the predator's gaze, while the others pull the young behind them. No planned strategy, only instinct bound together by unspoken signals carried through generations. Even in rest, the language of silence endures. The sharing of food is wordless. One cracks a bone, offers the marrow to another. No thank you is spoken, no gratitude exchanged in sound. And yet the act is understood. You see it in the eyes, in the nod, in the soft lowering of shoulders. You see it in the way hunger becomes a bond, not just a burden. Modern life often imagines these people as primitive, less than human. But look closer. What you see here is not lack, it is refinement. They could not afford confusion. A single misunderstanding, a single missed signal could mean death. Silence forced them to be precise, to be attentive, to be present in a way you may have forgotten. Think about your own silence now. When was the last time you sat beside another human being without speaking, without a phone, without filling the air with sound? Could you listen as they did? Could you trust the tilt of a head, the shift of a hand, to mean life or death? The silence is not empty, it is full of connection. And yet, silence has limits. It can carry only so much meaning. As the group grows, as the dangers multiply, silence strains beneath the weight of what it cannot say. How do you describe where the herd went yesterday? How do you warn of danger beyond the horizon? How do you comfort a child with nothing but a look? Perhaps this is why their mouths begin to shape more than cries and shouts. Perhaps this is where the first sparks of proto-speech stir, the sounds that are not yet words, but are more than noises, a shared rhythm of grunts, a shared melody of tones, not language as you know it, but the seed of something greater. One day, thousands of years from this moment, those seeds will grow into words, into stories, into myths and songs, into promises whispered in the dark. But for now, the silence still rules. The silence is survival. The silence is memory. The silence is the bridge between body and voice. And as you sit among them, as you feel the weight of this unspoken language, another weight rises in your belly. Hunger. The silence is deep, but the body's needs are deeper. And you begin to wonder, as they must have wondered each day. Without farms, without markets, without fire, how did they feed themselves? The silence fades, and the hunt begins. Hunger. It gnaws at you now as it gnawed at them 1,000,000 years ago. The silence of the night has passed, but the silence of the stomach remains, a deeper and more demanding force. You rise with the first light, weak but restless, your body calling for nourishment. And you are not alone. Every pair of eyes in the group carries the same shadow, the same hollow in the belly, the same urgency written across skin and bone. For Homo erectus, hunger was not an inconvenience. It was the rhythm of life. Every day began with the question, what will we eat and where will we find it? There were no fields to harvest, no granaries to store food, no shops to buy bread. There were only landscapes, wild and indifferent, grasslands stretching into the distance, forests dense with roots and berries, rivers filled with fish too swift to catch bare-handed, and carcasses left behind by lions or leopards. The earth gave, but it did not give easily. You watched them spread out in search of food. Some moved toward the trees, scanning for low-hanging fruit, for the bitter tang of wild nuts, for the bulbs buried just beneath the soil. Their hands are practiced. Fingers dig into dirt, nails scrape against roots, palms turn stones to uncover crawling insects. Protein is protein, no matter how small. Matter. Others scan the horizon. The herds are out there, antelopes, deer, wild cattle. But these are not easy prey. They are fast, alert, and armed with horns and hooves. To chase them with only stone in hand would be suicide, and so the humans follow at a distance, watching, waiting, learning the movements of the herds. Still others search for what predators leave behind. A carcass stripped of most flesh is not waste. It is opportunity. With stone axes, they can break bones open, sucking out the rich marrow hidden within. Fat, energy, life. Archaeologists today still find the scars of those blows on ancient bones, deep marks where stones split open the bodies of long-dead animals. Imagine the taste on your tongue, the rawness, the salt, the heavy tang of blood. No fire yet to soften the flavors, no cooking to kill the parasites. To eat was always to risk, but to starve was to die. And so they chose hunger's cure, even when it carried danger. Hunting was not yet the clean, organized chase of later ages. There were no bows, no arrows, no traps of rope or pit. There was only strategy, raw and simple. A group hides downwind, waiting for an animal to wander close. Another startles it, driving it toward the waiting hunters. Then, an ambush. Stones strike, wooden spears thrust, hands claw. Sometimes they succeed. Sometimes they fail and hunger lingers. But even failure teaches. Even failure feeds, if not with meat, then with memory, where the herd drinks, where the carcasses fall, where the lions feed first and leave last. Each pattern noticed, each lesson remembered, makes the next attempt less desperate. And all the while, hunger teaches patience. The rhythm of chewing roots, of cracking shells, of gnawing at tendons, becomes the rhythm of survival. You may not always be full, but you will always keep moving. This daily struggle shaped them. Their jaws grew strong, their teeth broad, their bodies lean and enduring. They became walkers of endless miles, searchers of scattered meals. Unlike the predators who feasted and starved in cycles, humans became creatures of balance. Never fully sated, never fully empty, but always searching, always enduring. And hunger was not just physical, it was also social. To find food was to share food. A marrow bone cracked open became a gift to the young. A bitter root split became an offering to the weak. In giving, they strengthened bonds. In bonds, they strengthened survival. You see it now as one hunter passes a fragment of bone to another. No words are spoken, no thanks exchanged, but the meaning is clear. We endure together or not at all. Archaeologists call it cooperation. You might call it compassion. Perhaps it was both. Yet hunger carried a shadow too. There were times when food was scarce, when drought turned rivers to dust and herds wandered far away. In those times, survival was not just endurance, it was gamble. To chase a herd meant risking exhaustion. To scavenge meant risking predators. To eat what should not be eaten, bitter plants, spoiled flesh, meant risking death from within. Every choice had teeth, and still they chose, because hunger allowed no silence. Can you feel it now in your own belly? That restless need, that sharp pull that will not let you rest until it is answered. Imagine living in that hunger not for hours, but for days, for weeks, for seasons. This was the truth of their existence. Every sunrise began with hunger, and every sunset ended with the question of whether it had been satisfied. But hunger did more than weaken, it inspired. Hunger forced them to think, to plan, to move beyond instinct. A predator hunts with fangs and claws, but humans hunted with imagination. They saw the path of the herd not only as it was, but as it might be. They could set an ambush, anticipate a turn, recognize a weakness. Hunger sharpened the mind as much as it sharpened the body. Some scholars believe this is where cooperation deepened most. Around the hunt, around the kill, around the feast that followed. Here, in the act of pursuing food, they learned to work as one. Silence, gesture, patience, courage, woven together in the pursuit of survival. But always the question remained, when the hunt is over, when the marrow is sucked, when the fruit is gone, what comes next? Because the belly never stays full for long. Hunger always returns. And so after the hunt, after the foraging, after the sharing, they faced the same terror every evening. The night. The hunger of the stomach could be eased for a time, but the hunger of the dark could not. The sun would set and with it all safety would fade. You can feel it now, as the light begins to dim once more. The shadows stretch, the air cools, the predators stir. The hunt is over, but the true danger is only beginning. Without fire, without walls, how do you survive the endless night? There is no electricity, no houses, no matches, no fire, only the darkness. The sky above you is wide and merciless. The moon hangs pale, spilling its cold light over the savannah. Shadows stretch long and trembling across the grass, every flicker a predator, every rustle a warning. And you, just a fragile human, thin-skinned, soft, walking upright but vulnerable. You are not alone. Around you, others huddle close, a cluster of bodies pressed for warmth, shoulders brushing, breathing in sync. Safety lies in numbers. This, even 1,000,000 years ago, your kind already knew. Alone, you would not last the night. Together, you are a trembling circle of life against the vast darkness. But the darkness is alive. Beyond the edge of the group, eyes gleam in the black. Lions prowl. Hyenas cackle in the distance. Leopards stalk the branches above. The night is their kingdom, not yours. You are intruders, slow, bare-handed, unequipped. Every sound snaps your attention. A breaking twig, a sudden cry, the pounding of your heart. Have you ever sat in true darkness without the comfort of a lamp, without the safety of a locked door? Can you imagine a night where the only barrier between you and teeth was the fragile courage of staying together? This was life before fire. The group presses into a shallow cave, a hollow in the stone. It offers some protection from wind, from predators. Still, it is not enough. The cold sinks deep, crawling into your skin. Unlike the animals that stalk you, you carry no fur thick enough to guard against the chill. You shiver, teeth rattling, arms clutching yourself. Some try to sleep, but sleep is shallow. Dreams fracture into fear. Every time the wind howls, every time an owl screeches, bodies jerk awake. Instinct rules the night. Alertness, caution, vigilance. And in the restless silence a strange thought stirs. Is this how it will always be? Without fire the nights were long, so long. Modern humans complain of insomnia, of nights that feel endless. But for them there is always light, the glow of a phone, the hum of a street lamp, the pulse of a city that never sleeps. For your ancestors, the night was a vast, unbroken ocean of black. The moon waxed and waned, but it gave no warmth. Stars glittered cold, distant, beautiful, yes, but indifferent. Imagine looking up and realizing that is all there is. An eternity of stars. No shelter of cities, no ceiling of stone or wood, just the infinite. Did they feel small beneath it? Or did they feel part of something vast, their breath rising like mist to join the cosmos? Perhaps both. You may wonder, how did they survive? How did fragile creatures without fire endure lions, hyenas, the bitter chill? The answer lies in togetherness. They huddled, they watched, they took turns staying awake. They chose caves, crevices, high ground. They learned the paths of predators, the patterns of migration. They trusted one another's senses. One stirred at the sound of a branch snapping. Another smelled danger on the wind. Another saw the faint gleam of eyes. Their technology was stone, nothing more. A hand axe to crack bone, a flake of flint to cut flesh. But against the night, stone was useless. A lion's roar could silence all courage. So they did the only thing left. They endured. And in enduring, they changed. Have you noticed how silence sharpens your mind? How sitting in darkness, even for a few minutes, makes your hearing grow keener, your breath slower, your body more alert? Multiply that by thousands of nights, by hundreds of generations. This was training. The dark shaped them. Without fire, humans became listeners. Every rustle mattered. Every breath of wind meant survival. They mapped their world by sound, by smell, by subtle changes. They became social not just by choice, but by necessity. Because in darkness, no one survives alone. Still, fear never left. Try to imagine a night when a storm rolls in. The rain lashes down, drenching skin, seeping into bones. Thunder cracks across the sky, lightning splitting the horizon. For us, storms are inconvenience. For them, storms were terror. Without fire, without walls, there was nowhere to hide. The sky itself seemed to rage against them. And yet, lightning also brought something else. Flames in the distance, trees aflame, grass crackling, brightness tearing through the black. For the first time they saw what the night could be if it were not endless. What did they feel that first time they watched fire? Fear, surely, but also wonder, and perhaps deep inside, longing. The night is long, but even the long night ends. Dawn comes, slowly, painfully, but it comes. The eastern sky glows pale, then pink, then gold. Shadows shrink back. Predators retreat to their dens. Warmth trickles across the land. Relief floods the body. You survived another night. But survival is not enough, not forever. Because every morning the same question waits. How many more nights must be endured? How long until the darkness is broken? And so, the nights without fire stretched on, hundreds of thousands of years. Generations born and gone, each huddled in caves, in branches, in shadows, each carrying the memory of fear, each dreaming perhaps of light. Imagine a child, your ancestor, watching the stars, wondering if they were fires too far away. Imagine an elder whispering stories, myths that made sense of the dark. Imagine the silence between them, heavy but sacred. Darkness was not only terror, it was also teacher. It taught patience, it taught humility. It taught humans to look at one another and find safety there. And yet, something was missing. The night could not be conquered by togetherness alone. To move forward, to truly transform, something else had to come. Something beyond endurance, beyond hiding. Something that would not just defend against darkness, but burn it away. Do you feel it? Here in this silence, in this cave of imagination, the hunger for more. Because one day, whether by lightning, by accident, or by wonder, fire would arrive. And when it did, everything changed. You survived the night without fire, But can you imagine the first time your kind touched it, not feared it, not fled it, but carried it in trembling hands? What did it mean to hold lightning in your palm? The night stretches endlessly, and in its silence something else awakens within you, not just fear, not just shivering survival, but thought. In the long hours when sleep is shallow, when the stars watch like silent eyes, the mind begins to wander. You imagine predators that are not there. You imagine safety that does not exist. You imagine warmth, light, comfort, something better than this. Perhaps this is when humanity's inner life began to stir, not in daylight, not in the chase of animals, but in the quiet torment of nights without fire. Think of it this way. Daylight was survival. Night was reflection. By day, you moved, foraged, hunted, followed the herds. The sun gave you direction, the land gave you food. By day, there was little time to think beyond the next step. But night forced you to stop, to wait, to endure. And in waiting, your mind grew restless. Can you feel it? The way silence draws questions from you. Questions about the stars, about life, about death. Questions without answers. The ancestors did not yet have words, but perhaps they had feelings, a pull toward mystery, a sense of something larger than flesh and bone. Still, danger never left. A lion's roar could freeze every bone in your body. The echo bounced through the valley, and every child buried its face against a mother's chest. Every adult reached for stone, though stone meant little against fangs. Imagine the moment, the dark pressing in, the fear so thick it becomes breath itself. You clutch one another, praying not with words but with silence. The predator passes or it doesn't. Life is always a gamble. Without fire, courage was not loud, it was quiet, a kind of stubborn endurance, the courage to last one more night. And yet, humans found ways to cope. Some nights, the moon was full, casting silver over the world. In those nights, fear was thinner. The moonlight gave shape to shadows, enough to ease the heart. Children slept more deeply. Adults dared to wander a little farther, gathering roots or berries even at dusk. Other nights, when the moon vanished, the blackness was complete. Those nights tested the soul. You learned to listen, to trust, not sight, but sound. The call of an owl, the rustle of grass, the whisper of wind through trees, each became a kind of language. In the absence of fire, the world itself spoke. Do you hear it even now? The stars. Let us return to them. Modern people see stars as decoration, pinpricks of light between city smog. But for your ancestors, stars were companions, guides, a map spread across eternity. Every night, the same patterns returned. Perhaps even before language, your kind recognized them. Think of Orion, his belt shining sharp. Think of the Milky Way, a river of light flowing endless across the sky. For us, they are myth. For them, they were presence, constant, eternal. Do you think they felt smaller under that sky, or larger? But no matter how bright the stars, the cold crept in. You shivered. You pressed against others for warmth, and still the chill seeped through skin into bone. Unlike bears, you could not hibernate. Unlike wolves, you had no fur. Unlike owls, no talons, no wings. Every night reminded you, you were fragile, naked, dependent. And maybe that is the secret. Maybe that is why humans became human, because fragility forced you to hold one another closer, to share warmth, to share watch, to share fear. Out of weakness grew connection, out of vulnerability grew society. Without fire, humans became human together. But let us not romanticize too much. The nights were brutal. Death was frequent. Children lost. Elders taken. Hunger gnawed as sharply as hyena teeth. Survival was never guaranteed. And yet here you are, proof that they endured. Proof that night after night, against all odds, they carried the fragile flame of life forward. Without fire, without shelter, only with one another. Can you feel their breath echoing in yours? Now imagine this. One night, lightning strikes in the distance. A tree bursts into flame. The sky glows orange. The dark retreats. Shadows dance. Heat pulses across the land. The group watches from afar. Some shrink back, afraid. Others step closer, eyes wide. The fire crackles, spits, devours wood. Dangerous, yes, but mesmerizing. They do not yet know what it means. They do not yet hold it in their hands. But something stirs. A seed is planted. Could this be the answer to their endless nights? Cliffhanger into Chapter 5. You have endured the long dark. You have listened to the silence, trembled at the roar of predators, counted the stars for comfort. But now, light flickers on the horizon. What will happen when the night is no longer only endured, but conquered? You are still in that night we left behind, cold, shivering, huddled with your kin in the cave's shallow embrace. The world outside is black, alive with eyes and teeth. You pray, not with words, but with hope, that dawn will come quickly. And then it happens. A storm rolls over the horizon, clouds rumble with thunder, lightning tears open the sky. For a heartbeat, night is gone, replaced by brilliance. And then fire. A tree split by lightning bursts into flame, sparks leap to the grass, and the world itself begins to burn. You stare, your people stare. Fear grips your chest. The crackling, the roaring, the orange glow, it is like nothing you've seen. Predators flee, tails tucked. The night is no longer theirs. It belongs to something else. At first, fire was not a tool. It was a terror. Your ancestors kept their distance, too close, and the heat singed hair. The smoke choked lungs. Too close, and the flames leapt like a predator itself, devouring wood, grass, air. Many must have died trying to approach it, misjudging its hunger. And yet, they could not look away, because fire was more than danger. It was light. It was warmth. It was possibility. Have you ever felt that pull towards something that frightens you but also fascinates you? That is what fire was. Fear and longing bound together. Eventually, boldness triumphed. Somebody, perhaps a young one, reckless with curiosity, or an elder desperate for warmth, reached for a branch half burning at the edge of the flames. They lifted it, trembling, eyes wide. Smoke curled into the sky. Sparks drifted into the wind. And suddenly humanity's story changed. We know this not from imagination alone, but from the ground itself. Deep in Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered the faint traces of ancient ash, charred bone, burned plant remains, dating back nearly 1 million years. This is evidence, the earliest we know, that humans did not just fear fire, they began to keep it. Not create it, not yet, but keep it. Carrying embers in branches, feeding flames with grass, protecting it as though fire itself were a living thing, a fragile companion that must not die. Imagine the reverence of that moment. A group gathered around a flickering branch, shielding it from the wind, holding it as carefully as we now hold a newborn. For the first time, humans did not only endure the night, they pushed it back. Think of what fire meant. No longer did the cold seep unchallenged into bone. Flames brought heat, warmth spreading from skin to marrow. Children slept more deeply, huddled not only against each other but against the glow. Elders rested easier, knowing predators hesitated to approach the flickering wall of light. And beyond survival, fire stretched time itself. Before fire, night was silence, fear, waiting. With fire, night became a place to gather, to sit, to share, to imagine. The circle of flames became the first theater, the first classroom, the first temple. What stories were told there, gestures dancing in orange glow. What dreams rose with the smoke. But fire did more than soothe. It transformed the body itself. Raw meat became cooked meat, easier to chew, easier to digest. More energy, more nutrients unlocked. And with energy came growth. Brains swelled larger, minds sharpened. Every spark fed not just bellies, but futures. Some scientists believe this was the turning point, that cooked food fueled the evolution of larger human brains. In other words, without fire, you would not be here. Without fire, thought itself might have burned less brightly. Pause here and ask yourself, have we forgotten the sacredness of fire? We flick a switch and bulbs glow. We tap a screen and pixels shine. We burn without reverence, forgetting that once a single ember meant life or death. Our ancestors guarded fire as though it were spirit itself. We guard deadlines, schedules, alarms. Their rhythm was crackle and smoke. Ours is clock and screen. Which of us truly is enslaved? Now return to that circle 1 million years ago. The flames dance, shadows flicker across the cave walls. For the first time, predators keep their distance. For the first time, warmth holds through the night. For the first time, silence is broken not by roars and cries, but by the gentle murmur of voices, proto-speech, laughter, perhaps even song. Can you see it? The group leans closer, eyes reflecting orange. A child gazes at the fire as though it were magic. An elder points upward, hand tracing the stars, telling a story in grunts and gestures, shadows moving like spirits. Here, in this circle, imagination is born. Fire was not invention, it was discovery, a gift from sky and storm. But what humans did with it, that was invention. They learned to feed it wood, to shelter it from rain, to carry it from camp to camp. Some even learned to bury embers beneath ash, preserving heat through the night. Fire became companion, protector, teacher, and in return, it reshaped everything. The night was no longer endless, the dark no longer invincible. Humanity had gained not just a tool, but a partner. Do you feel the weight of that? One moment, trembling in darkness. The next, bathed in light. This is what historians call a threshold moment, a point when everything changes, when the old world vanishes and the new begins. Before fire, humans were prey. With fire, they began to dream of more. But let us be careful. Fire was not always friend. It demanded respect. Leave it untended, and it died. Grow careless, and it devoured homes, forests, lives. Even now, we live with this truth. Fire warms us, feeds us, lights our cities. But it also consumes, destroys, reminds us of its hunger. Perhaps that is why, deep in the human soul, fire has always been sacred, worshipped in temples, carried in rituals, feared in myths. Because fire was never only heat, it was mystery. And maybe, just maybe, that night 1 million years ago, when your ancestors huddled around their first controlled flames, they already felt this. They had no words, but they had awe, and awe is the beginning of story. So ask yourself, what did they see in the fire? Did they see spirits? Did they see ancestors? Did they see gods? Or did they simply see hope, glowing against the dark? Whatever they saw, they gathered closer, and the circle of light became the circle of humanity itself. The fire did not just warm their skin, it lit their minds. Around its glow, imagination stirred, and dreams began to take shape. But what happens when humans first start to dream? When sparks on stone become sparks in thought? The fire is still burning before you, a fragile sun born in the heart of darkness. Its crackle is soft, hypnotic, as if whispering secrets that no human has yet put into words. Shadows stretch and sway across the cave walls, twisting into shapes that do not exist, yet somehow feel alive. A child stares into the flames, not just with sight, but with imagination. The sparks rise like stars breaking free of gravity, dancing into the black sky. And for the first time, a human mind begins to dream awake. Before this moment, dreams belonged only to sleep. In the dark, the body would rest, and the mind would drift into visions it could not control. But here, in the glow of firelight, dreams slip into waking life. Shapes in the flames become animals, spirits, ancestors. A flicker becomes a story. What you are witnessing is the birth of imagination. No tool is held in the hand, no stone is shaped, and yet something invisible is being forged. Fire did not just cook food, it cooked thought itself. Around the flames, people began to play with the raw material of mind. Perhaps a hunter lifted his hand, shadows stretching against the stone, and others laughed or gasped at the figure dancing on the wall. Perhaps a mother pointed to the sparks and told her child they were the souls of those who came before. Perhaps silence itself became story, the movement of light and shadow speaking without words. And this changed everything. For imagination is not just escape, it is practice. Around the fire, humans rehearsed hunts before they happened. They imagined dangers before they struck. They pictured the steps of journeys not yet taken. In thought, they traveled beyond the cave, beyond the valley, into worlds that did not yet exist. This power, born of fire, would guide every invention to come. Think for a moment of your own life. The screen you hold in your hands, the buildings that surround you, the cities humming with light. None of it existed in the beginning. Someone dreamed it first. Someone stared into the dark and imagined what was not yet real. That gift, that burden began here with the fire. The same way you watch images flicker across pixels, your ancestors watched shadows flicker across stone. And just as you lose yourself in story, they lost themselves in flame. The fire also became ritual. It was no longer only warmth or light, but mystery. People sat in circles, the oldest shape of gathering, and the circle of fire matched the circle of humans. Something in that geometry stirred the sacred. Maybe they began to hum, voices blending with the crackle. Maybe they danced, shadows leaping as though spirits joined them. Fire turned survival into ceremony. It was not just a tool to keep death away, it was a doorway into meaning. And slowly something new grew in the mind, memory shaped into tale. The hunt of the day retold at night, with gestures and sounds. The dangers worn through mimicry and story. Lessons passed not only by action, but by imagination. The first myths were not written in books. They were carved in firelight on the walls of caves, in the gasps and laughter of children, in the solemn nods of elders. Imagine what it felt like to sit there. The night pressing outside, the circle of warmth within, flames painting every face with gold and shadow, the smell of smoke in your lungs, the taste of roasted roots or charred meat on your tongue, and above it all, the sense that something greater was present, something alive in the fire, watching with you, speaking through its sparks. Even now you know this feeling. Have you never stared into a campfire and felt time dissolve? Have you never watched the flames dance and lost yourself in their rhythm? That trance, that hypnosis, is older than civilization. It belongs to you because it belonged to them. The human brain, sculpted for 1,000,000 years by firelight, still softens in its glow. And here another transformation began. Night no longer meant only fear or rest. Night became story, memory, and imagination. This stretched the mind into new shapes. The brain, freed by cooked food, now filled by shared tales, began to expand its world. Firelight extended the day, but it also extended thought. But there is another truth. Fire demanded community. A single ember could die if left alone. To keep it alive, humans had to work together, feeding it, guarding it, passing it from hand to hand. Fire was fragile, and so it bound people together. A group with fire survived, a group without it perished. Fire was not just invention, it was covenant. It taught humans to cooperate, to share, to protect something beyond themselves. In this way, fire became the first teacher of society. Yet with every gift, fire gave a shadow. To gather around flame meant to separate from the dark. Those outside the circle looked in, strangers, dangers. Perhaps this was the seed of division, us and them, inside and outside, safe and unsafe. Fire illuminated, but it also excluded. And so even as it warmed, it created the first borders. Think about the contrast to your own time. Our fire has become electric light, humming wires, glowing screens. We gather not in circles but in rectangles, rooms shaped by walls, faces lit by phones. The old rhythm of the flame is gone, replaced by the blue glow of pixels. But the longing remains. We binge stories not because we are modern, but because we are ancient. We scroll because once we stared. The hunger is the same, the hunger for light in the dark, for story in the silence. So when you fall asleep with a movie playing, or when you lose yourself in endless feeds at night, know this: you are still sitting by the fire. Only now the fire is hidden in glass and metal, tamed beyond recognition. But it is the same spark, the same spell. And yet perhaps something was lost. Around the ancient fire, people looked into one another's eyes, their faces glowing together in the same light. Today, each of us stares into our own private fire, a lonely circle in the dark. Once fire connected. Now it often isolates. Perhaps the old ones, if they could see us, would wonder how we let the circle break. Still, the story continues. For the fire gave humans not only warmth and food, Not only imagination and ritual, but the courage to dream beyond survival. With fire, they began to picture what did not yet exist: tools, shelters, futures. And soon those dreams would not remain shadows on the wall. Soon the spark of imagination would leap into action. But before that, something deeper would stir. Around the flames, under the vast sky, humans did not only imagine the world around them, they began to imagine the world beyond them. Spirits, ancestors, gods. The fire was a mirror of the sun, a piece of the heavens stolen and held in the hands of mortals. And in its glow, humans took their first steps into belief. The flames still burn, and the circle still gathers. But now the question rises with the smoke. When imagination awakens, when myth is born, what happens to the human soul? The answer waits in the next flicker. The flames still glow before you, crackling like an ancient heartbeat. The night outside is endless, cold, and full of predators, but here, in this fragile circle of light, humans have found more than warmth. They have found meaning. The fire does not only chase away the dark, it draws something out from within. It awakens questions. Why does the fire live? Why does it die? Who gave it to us? And when it burns high, when sparks leap into the sky, are those sparks messengers of something greater? A hunter stares at the flames, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet he cannot look away. He sees shapes in the glow, the outline of animals he has chased, shadows of ancestors he barely remembers. He feels the presence of those who are no longer alive, as if they too sit around the fire watching with him. The boundary between living and dead blurs in the orange light. In that blur, belief is born. At first, it may have been simple. A gesture toward the sky when thunder roared, a shiver of awe when lightning struck, a whisper to the wind, or a silent nod to the body of a fallen companion. But slowly, these gestures became patterns, repeated actions that carried weight, and those patterns became the seeds of ritual. Imagine the hush that fell when the first human died, not as prey, not as scattered bones in the grass, but as someone known, someone loved. The body did not vanish into silence. It remained, heavy with mystery. The living gathered, not only to grieve, but to wonder. They may not have dug a grave or painted the walls with stories yet. That would come many thousands of years later. But perhaps they touched the body with gentleness, or placed stones around it, or left food nearby, unsure if the spirit still hungered. In such moments, the invisible entered the human world. Fire magnified this. Flames became more than heat. They became presence. As faces glowed in its light, people may have felt watched, not only by one another but by something unseen. The fire consumed, transformed, and survived, much like life itself. It was both destroyer and giver. How could it not become sacred? Around the flames, humans may have begun their first silent prayers, not in words but in gestures, in posture, in awe. Even now you know this feeling. When you stand before fire or thunder or the vast sky, a quiet shiver runs through you. You may call it wonder, you may call it fear, but it is older than language. It is the same breath your ancestors drew when they looked into the flames and felt the world watching back. This was the dawn of the invisible, not the invisible of darkness, but of spirit. Humans began to sense that the world was alive in more ways than the eye could see. Every storm was more than weather, every shadow more than absence. Death was not the end, but a doorway. And as these thoughts stirred, ritual began to take shape. Simple at first, yet profound. A hand lifted to the sky, a stone left by a body, a song hummed into the night. Think for a moment of your own rituals, a birthday candle, a moment of silence, a prayer before sleep. These actions feel natural, yet they are echoes of something unimaginably old. What you do in comforted rooms, your ancestors did in caves and forests, under lightning and stars. Ritual is not something added to human life. It is woven into it, older than language itself. But why did ritual matter? Because it turned fear into meaning. Death was no longer only terror, it was transition. The storm was no longer only threat, it was voice. Fire was no longer only survival, it was symbol. In ritual, humans learned to live not just in the world as it was, but in the world as it could be imagined. They shaped reality through gesture and belief, and that made them different from every other creature. Yet ritual did more than calm fear. It united the group. A shared gesture, a shared silence, a shared act. These bound people together in ways survival alone could not. Ritual made belonging. To sit by the fire and join the action was to say, I am part of this circle, part of this story. To refuse was to stand apart, outside the warmth, outside the meaning. Ritual was glue. It made humans not just individuals surviving together, but communities dreaming together. And here is a thought. Perhaps this was the first true art, not painting or carving, but action shaped by meaning. The raising of a hand, the arrangement of stones, the dance of shadows around the flames. Every ritual was performance, and every performance was a story. The line between survival and art began to blur. But what happens when ritual deepens? What happens when humans begin not only to imagine stories in the fire, but to imagine spirits, gods, ancestors, invisible forces shaping the world? What happens when belief takes root, when the unseen becomes as real as the seen? The fire still burns, its light trembling on stone walls. The people still gather, their eyes wide with wonder. And in the glow of that ancient circle, the question rises like smoke. When humans gave birth to ritual, did they also give birth to the soul? The fire is low tonight, its glow softer, its breath slower, as though even flame has grown weary. Yet in this hush something stirs. Your eyes drift to the stones around you, to a shard of ochre glowing faintly in the light, to a piece of bone carved not for survival, but for some other reason. Something less practical, something more mysterious. You wonder, why would a human with hunger pressing on the belly and predators pressing in the dark spend precious time scratching a line into stone? Why would someone carry a red mineral across miles just to hold its shimmer in hand? Perhaps it began with simple fascination. A child's hand picks up a stone shaped like an animal, not because it is useful, but because it is beautiful. The curve of it feels like a secret. They show it to their kin, who nod slowly, understanding without words that this object is different. It is kept, not discarded. This keeping is a beginning. Imagine the quiet of that world. No hum of machines, no buzz of wires, only the sound of breath and night. In that silence, the smallest detail becomes enormous. The way moonlight reflects on water, the way sparks leap into the air, the way red ochre smears across skin. For the first time, humans may have marked themselves, not for camouflage, not for function, but for meaning. A streak of color, a smudge of dust, a mark that whispers, I am not only body, I am more. And so art began, not with grand caves painted full of animals, for that would come much later, but with gestures, scratches, pigments, choices. Early signs of imagination, scattered across time like fragile seeds. The oldest ochre, carved and carried, dates back hundreds of thousands of years. The first lines etched into stone may not have been pictures at all, but they were something equally powerful. Proof that a human hand sought to leave behind more than utility. A mark was left, and in that mark, a message. Do you feel it, even now? That impulse to carve initials into a tree, to take a photograph not for use but for memory. That is the same pulse that drove your ancestors to etch lines into bone. The desire to say, I was here, I saw, I felt. But what moved them to this? Perhaps it was the rhythm of fire itself, casting shifting patterns on the walls, patterns that begged to be copied. Perhaps it was the dreams that came when night stretched too long, when stories unfolded in sleep and demanded to be given shape. Perhaps it was death, the need to hold on to what was vanishing, to grasp a piece of someone who had gone. Whatever it was more than instinct. It was imagination. This imagination was dangerous. To imagine is to see beyond what is. To dream is to create a world that does not yet exist. And in that dreaming, humans began to step apart from every other creature. Wolves hunted, lions ruled, birds sang, but only humans asked, what if the stone could become more than stone? What if the shadow could become a story? Around the fire you see them experimenting. One hand scrapes pigment onto skin, another arranges stones in a circle, not for a wall but for beauty, but for... Children copy these gestures, and suddenly meaning spreads like flame. Soon the whole group shares in this new rhythm, not only surviving, but expressing, not only eating, but remembering. And with this came a subtle shift. Humans began to see not only with eyes, but with minds. A scratch became a symbol became memory, memory became story. The world was no longer only present, it was past and future as well. In the smallest scratch, time itself was caught. But ask yourself, what did these early scratches mean? Were they tallies of hunts? Were they prayers for safety? Or were they simply play, the joy of making, the thrill of shaping? We may never know. Archaeologists find lines, pigments, unusual stones collected, but they cannot tell us what was felt when the hand moved across the surface. Yet you can imagine, because you have felt it too. The urge to doodle in the margin of a page, the impulse to hum a tune with no purpose, the sudden wonder at a sunset that makes you wish to capture it. That is the same ancient thread, stretching back 1,000,000 years. And yet art was not separate from survival. It may have strengthened it. A line scratched could become a way to remember. A painted face could strike fear into predators or rivals. A decorated stone could mark a sacred place. Meaning gave power. Power gave survival. Still, something deeper was happening. With each mark, humans declared themselves more than flesh. They became creatures of the unseen, shaping not just tools, but symbols, not just survival, but story. In that leap, the human spirit began to awaken. Tonight, as you listen, the fire crackles and shadows leap across the walls. In the flicker, you almost see animals, deer, lions, mammoths, dancing in the dark. You wonder, did they see the same? Did they look into the firelight and find stories hidden in its glow? And if so, did those stories make them braver, stronger, more human? The whispers of art were not yet the grand murals of painted caves, but they were the first notes of a song that would echo across all time. And you sitting here now are still part of that song. Every picture you draw, every story you tell, every mark you make is another verse in the same ancient melody. But where does art lead? If a scratch in stone can carry memory, if pigment on skin can carry identity, then what happens when humans carry these whispers further? What happens when marks become meaning and meaning becomes ritual? The fire grows dim, its smoke curling upward like a question without answer. You sit in the glow, surrounded by silence, and you feel the weight of it. Art is not just beauty, it is spirit, it is memory, it is the birth of story. And with story comes belief. The question lingers in the embers. If art is a whisper of beauty, what happens when humans begin to whisper to the unseen itself? The fire has burned low, its glow soft on stone walls, and yet something greater than warmth fills the circle. You feel it in the silence between breaths, in the weight of eyes turned not only toward the flames, but toward something beyond. This is not just survival. This is not just story. This is ritual. It begins simply. A body lies still, no breath rising from its chest, no light in its eyes. For other creatures, death is final. Flesh consumed, bones scattered, silence restored. But here, among these humans, something different happens. The body is not abandoned. It is approached with care, touched with gentleness. Stones are placed around it, perhaps to mark it, perhaps to protect it, perhaps to honor it. Food may be left nearby. A gesture may be made toward the sky. These acts are not yet burial in the full sense. That will come much later, in hundreds of thousands of years. But here lie the seeds of ritual, the first recognition that life is more than body, that death is more than absence, and so the invisible enters the human world. Storms are no longer only weather, they are voices. The wind is no longer only air, it is spirit. Fire is no longer only flame, it is presence. The humans do not have words for these things, not yet, but they feel them. They sense that behind the visible world there is another, vast and unseen, full of forces that move them, guide them, threaten them. Ritual becomes the bridge between the two. Around the fire, gestures take shape. A hand lifted, a silence kept, a rhythm beaten on stone. These actions are repeated, and with each repetition they gather weight. The group joins in, not only to honor the dead or to appease the storm, but to bind themselves together. Ritual is not just about the unseen, It is about belonging. To move in rhythm is to say, I am with you. To share silence is to say, I carry your grief. To touch the flame together is to say, we face the night as one. Think of your own life, the birthday candle, the prayer before sleep, the minute of silence. These are rituals, small and familiar, yet they carry the same ancient current. They are echoes of the first humans who 1 million years ago sat by a body and chose not to leave it to the animals, but to mark it, to linger, to honor. Ritual was born of need, but it grew into meaning, and meaning changed everything. For the first time, fear was not only terror, it was explanation. The storm was not only noise, it was the voice of something larger. Death was not only loss, it was transition. These interpretations may not have been accurate, but they gave humans something powerful, the ability to endure, to survive not only physically, but emotionally. Ritual was medicine for the spirit, but ritual also became performance. A circle of humans moving in rhythm, humming in low tones, raising hands in unison. These acts were not only for themselves. They were for the unseen, for the spirits they imagined, for the ancestors they felt hovering close. The gestures became art, the art became story, the story became belief, and once belief took root, the invisible became as real as the visible. Picture them now, sitting in a cave, the body of a lost hunter near, the fire casting shadows. Someone sprinkles red ochre dust, the same pigment used for decoration, now scattered as offering. Someone hums, low and steady, a sound that trembles like the wind itself. Others join in, and soon the cave is alive with sound, with rhythm, with something larger than survival. Is this grief? Is this prayer? Is this ritual? Yes, it is all of these and more. It is the beginning of religion, not as doctrine, not as words on a page, but as raw, wordless awe. The invisible is dangerous too. To believe is to imagine forces beyond control. To see meaning in storm and shadow is to surrender power to things unseen. But it is also to find courage. If spirits walk with you, you are never truly alone. If ancestors linger, you are never truly forgotten. If fire itself is a gift, then life itself is sacred. And in ritual, humans found time, not the clock time of our modern slavery, not hours counted and sold, but sacred time, cyclical time. Each gesture, each repetition, each return to the fire connected them to those before and those after. Ritual made life part of a story larger than the individual. It gave them a past, a future, a place in the vastness. Do you feel it still, the pull of ritual? When you light a candle for someone gone, when you stand in silence with others, when you repeat an action not for function but for meaning, you are echoing them. The line from their circle to yours is unbroken. Ritual never left us. We only changed its forms. But what happens when ritual begins to shape not only spirit, but society? When the invisible becomes the authority, when ritual dictates action, when shared belief binds humans into groups larger than family, larger than tribe? What happens when ritual gives birth not only to belonging, but to order? The fire flickers low and smoke curls upward like prayer. Shadows move on stone, almost alive. The humans sit in silence, bound by something larger than themselves, and in that silence, you feel the weight of it. Ritual is not just an act, it is a doorway. Through it, humans step into a world where the unseen rules as powerfully as the seen. And the question smolders in the embers. If ritual gave birth to the soul, what would happen when humans, wandering still, began to gather not only in circles of fire, but on the land itself? Take one last slow breath and let your thoughts drift back across the chapters we have wandered together. You began at the dawn, where the earth still roared with wild winds and shadows, and where you first opened your eyes in a world without fire, without language, without cities. A forgotten dawn, yet not lost. The memory of it hums still in your bones. You walked beside them as they spoke without words, their silence filled with gestures, glances, and the raw grammar of survival. You felt their hunger, the endless search for roots, for berries, for marrow hidden in bones cracked by stone. You stood with them in darkness, when the night was filled with prowling lions, when only the moon kept watch, when fear itself was a companion. And then you witnessed the gift of fire, Born from lightning, borrowed from the wild, tamed with trembling hands. Fire was more than warmth, more than light. It was the spark that opened minds, stretched nights, and pulled voices into story. Around flames, imagination woke, shadows danced on stone, and the first myths whispered. Tools followed, stone on stone, rhythm and patience shaping edges that cut, broke, built. With these, survival became art, and necessity became skill. And even then, humans began to notice beauty, the curve of a stone, the shimmer of ochre, scratches made not for use but for meaning. The seeds of art, fragile yet persistent, stirred in the quiet of caves and the gaze of children. You felt their awe at death, their silence before storms, their wonder at spirits that could not be seen but could be felt. Rituals began not as ceremonies carved in stone, but as pauses, as breaths held in the presence of mystery. Even in a world so raw, humans reached beyond flesh toward something invisible. And then you arrived at the first walls, mud pressed into shape, stones stacked with care, trenches dug in fear and hope. Inside the walls, safety, warmth, belonging. Outside the walls, shadow, danger, otherness. In that act of building, humanity shifted forever. To mark an inside is to create an outside. To claim safety is to risk separation. The wall was both promise and burden, freedom and chain. All along this path you walked with them, not as a distant historian, but as a companion in the silence of the night. You felt the crunch of marrow bones, the chill of fireless darkness, the glow of flames on skin, the scrape of stone against stone, the hush of ritual, the weight of walls. Their world is gone, yet not gone. It breathes still in you. And so here at the close you must ask, what have we gained and what have we lost? We live now in vast cities, surrounded by glowing screens instead of fire. Our walls are higher, built of steel and glass. Yet their promise and their burden remain the same. We are safe, yes, but we are also confined. We are connected, yes, but we are also divided. Do you remember the silence before words, the darkness before fire, the freedom before walls? What if those were not deficits, but treasures? What if the ancient ones, in their hunger and fear, also held a kind of clarity we have forgotten, a freedom that our cities, our calendars, our schedules have buried? Perhaps this is why you are here in this quiet corner of the internet, listening not for noise but for stillness. You too carry their memory. You too walk with shadows. You too hunger not only for food, but for meaning. And in remembering them, you remember yourself. So let this story linger as the fire dims. Let the echoes of the forgotten dawn, of silence, of flame, of tools, of ritual, of walls, hum softly in you. Let them remind you that you are more than citizen, more than worker, more than the ticking of clocks. You are the child of wanderers, of firekeepers, of stone shapers, of dreamers. And as you close your eyes tonight, ask yourself, what walls do you build, and what walls do you long to leave behind? Thank you for staying until the end. If you felt something stir, if the shadows of long ago lives touched you tonight, you can choose to like or subscribe, but no pressure, no rush. Just as those before us moved at the rhythm of stars and seasons, let your choice move in its own time. For now, rest. The fire has burned low, the walls are quiet, and in the silence across a million years you are not alone.